The Nintendo DS remains one of my all-time favorite systems that I have a ton of nostalgia for. Both that and the Wii were my first exposure to video games as a medium when I was really young, and well, I guess you could say that had quite the influence on my life. One of the strengths of the DS specifically was that it was a really versatile system, due to both its dual screens and touch capabilities. You were able to find some pretty creative gaming experiences on this little thing as a result. While all these games could technically exist on other systems, I felt like there was this greater encouragement to be creative with the kind of games that could be on the DS. They don't have to be revolutionary titles that'll blow your mind at their innovation, but they could still be amazing experiences that I couldn't see being first made with any other system but the DS in mind. And this is where a game like Ghost Trick Phantom Detective comes in. Released on June 19th, 2010 in North America, Ghost Trick was developed by Shu Takumi, who is most well known for creating the Ace Attorney series. He's worked on Ace Attorney 1 through 4, Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright, and Daikekten Saibon 1 and 2. This game in some ways could be considered a spiritual success to the Ace Attorney. You can definitely feel that it's made by the same team with the kind of writing that it has, and the fact that both are mystery adventure games. But I want to primarily judge this game as its own thing. I don't really plan on constantly bringing up Ace Attorney as a comparison point for this game. Also, I should probably make clear that when I get deep into spoilers, I'll give a warning and a timestamp for it. The rest of the video will still be spoiler free, unless you don't want to see or know anything about it, period, in which case, go play the game for yourself, I guess. This has been a game that's been in the backlog for a while. It's one that I've always had an interest in and heard really good things about, but never actually went out and played. Well, since I'm here and talking about it now, I think it's finally time I make that plunge. Oh, and also, since recording off a DS is kinda hard, I'm gonna be using an emulator to be playing this game, and recording footage. There is an iOS version of the game, but like, good for it. I think I spent enough time introducing the game though, so let's just begin already. I really like the title screen for this game a lot. Just a simple new game option in mysterious environments, but if you tap it, everything turns red with the main character's apparition appearing with a strong blue to contrast that red. I love little stuff like this. So, this game begins on the night of a junkyard, and wait, you're dead. And this woman is about to get shot herself. Cool. However, you aren't just dead. You're actually now a ghost that has the ability to cling on to objects around you and manipulate them. You can call these the powers of the dead. You don't know how or why you have them, but you do. And with your mysterious new ghost powers, you were able to, wait, no, she still dies. I mean, I did my best. However, as told to you by this lamp, stay with me now, by connecting yourself with the body of a recently deceased victim, you were able to go back in time 4 minutes before their death. Through this, you're able to save the life of the redhead, who you find out is called Lynn, by committing a murder of your own, and she's able to escape the area. During this, you learn two important things. 1. You have no memories at all, and don't even know who you are besides the appearance of your corpse, which is the spirit form you take. 2. According to the lamp, you have only this night to be a ghost, because once it ends, you'll stop existing completely. With this final night that you have, your goal is to find out the truth of who you are, how you died, and why. This objective is simple at first, but it grows complex fast. There's going to be a lot of different events that take place, new deaths that you will have to reverse, many characters that you're going to be interacting with or observing, mysteries and questions that will keep popping up, and your character, who's literally named Sissel, is connected to it all one way or the other. Right off the bat, I love how this game gives you a clear goal. Sissel's desire to find the truth is heavily understandable since it's all he really has left, and this motivation keeps you going all throughout. I want to figure out the truth of who he really was as much as he did, and the answers given throughout don't disappoint at all. This game is really great with keeping constant hooks throughout the whole story. Answers will always lead to questions one way or another, and it's just really satisfying to see this whole story unfold. I think I should probably next get into how this game plays though. The game has the standard visual novel format to progress the story, with a lot of text boxes and expressions. This will still be a lot of your experience, but where things get unique is the fact that you're a ghost. You have two main mechanics as a ghost. The first that you can pause time in order to move your spirit to different objects, which is how you'll be moving around areas all the time. Your range is extremely limited, so you'll only be moving between objects that are closely connected. I swear, there's a certain type of pain with trying to reach your soul to one object, but you just can't do it! The other mechanic you have is the trick objects. Not every object can be interactive, but many of them will allow you to do some sort of action. It's also pretty cute how both buttons on the bottom screen make up the title of the game. They aren't overly extravagant, but you can do stuff like roll a wheel, flick a switch, spin a fan faster, or even drop an object on someone to commit murder. Think of it like those ghost videos where objects will move or do something without any explicable reason. Your actions are basically meant to resemble that, except nobody in the room really reacts much to this stuff, or seems to care. Traversing through areas ought to be a puzzle of how you can manipulate objects in ways that will give you more jumping points to move through. And you move between different locations through telephone lines. You get more locations by tracing the calls that different characters make between each other. And I don't know why phone lines are able to be used by the dead, but whatever, it's cool. This maneuverability takes a little bit to fully wrap your head around, but getting used to it happens fast. An important factor to remember is that you'll sometimes be able to switch between objects mid-action. So if it's something like activating a fan to raise up a flag, you want to jump to that flag as the fan starts to blow on it. This is the kind of stuff you're often expected to do. I grew to really like this unique type of traversal. Solving how the heck I was supposed to even get to one place offered a ton of fun and interesting moments, and nothing ever feels too cryptic. Getting lost as well is pretty hard to do. It's usually clear where you're supposed to go, and the story often keeps moving forward, notably as you progress. All these ghost powers though are put to the test the most in reversing the deaths of many unfortunate victims. There'll be many times in this game where important characters die, sometimes repeatedly, and each time you're taken back in time 4 minutes before their death. Sometimes their soul will even accompany you to give some more interactions and maybe help you out. You're first shown the full moments of what happened to the victim, and afterwards, you have to figure out a way for their fate to be averted with your ghost powers. These are the biggest puzzles of the game, where you have to think of a ways to stop their death with your limited movement and abilities to mess with objects. It's first as simple as making noise to be a distraction, but it can get as complex as stopping a sniper from taking out the target from a distance, to even stopping a Rube Goldberg machine from setting off a trap. You're given a time limit each death reversal, and this goes down as the scene continues to unfold. The only way to stop it is when you're in the ghost form that allows you to move between objects. This means that sometimes, preventing a death can be a matter of waiting for the right time for something to happen, and then acting upon it. You're free to retry as many times as you want without any repercussions, and you'll even be given checkpoints to go back to once you make a major change of fate. My only major complaint with them is that there's no way to properly speed the actions themselves if you've already gone through them. You can fast forward through text you've already read, but for the actions themselves, you still have to wait for cues to happen to properly progress for certain moments. I think just a quick fast forward button, similar to something like speeding up the non-stop debates in Danganronpa, wouldn't have been too much to ask for. It's really the only apparent issue I have with the game, but it's still not that big of a deal, and death reversals won't take that long to get through either way, if you know what you're doing. Unless you're an idiot like me that keeps getting stuck at parts that are pretty obvious in hindsight. The difficulty of solving these puzzles is probably harder than the Somnium Files, but still easier than something like Ace Attorney. These parts of the game were still honestly really cool to go through. Figuring out what process I had to follow with my ghost trick abilities always felt really satisfying, and this game was good with giving all those aha moments. You know, like those kind where the solution suddenly clicks in your head after messing around for a bit, which gives this really satisfying feeling once you actually pull it off. The game does a good job with that and makes these segments more and more complex as the game goes on. You can really tell they made full use of this idea of reversing deaths by making each death reversal feel more unique than the last, and the solutions never really felt the same too often. Take the second one in the game for example. Compared to the last one, which is just a matter of causing distractions, your main goal is to act before the main threat even arrives, cause by then you can't really do anything. So you end up having to figure out how to get the two characters in that room under the couch so that they'll be hidden by the time the assassin arrives to shoot the dog. That's just one early example though. Things get pretty crazy by the end, rest assured. Even as a dead person, there's still gonna be a lot of characters that you see and meet. You won't exactly be able to talk to all of them, but rather observe the conversations that they'll have with each other. That doesn't mean the only characters you can interact with is that desk lamp who's named Ray. Every time you interact with someone who's died, you'll still be able to communicate with them even after you save them, because you will now have the ability to telepathically communicate with them. This was a smart move, since it's how they make Sissel more than just an observer and more involved with other characters. This dude overall is pretty cool. You know as much about him as he does considering the whole no memory part, and he usually has great reactions to whatever characters he's with. First he's only in it to find out who he is, but you can tell as the night goes on, he's growing to care more for those than just himself. The second main character can be considered Lynn. She's a new detective that's a large influencer in the story that has her own goals, arguably as important as Sissel's, and these two together probably interact the most throughout. She's the most energetic and out there character to bounce off of Sissel's more chill and collected attitude. It kind of feels like a buddy detective story when these two are around, except you're the buddy and a dead one at that. Missile is a pretty fan favorite character in this game as well. He's this little Pomeranian bursting with joy and adorableness. He's exactly what you would expect from a dog like this being able to actually talk to you, and come on, just look at that face, it's too good for this world. Besides these characters, you got Lennon's roommates, Camilla, the Gruen Inspector Cabanella, these bumbling security guards that kind of do nothing at their desk, with one of them just playing with cards, which dang, is a relatable kind of bored. This old pigeon guy, this minister going through depression, and like crap, I can't name every character in this game, there's so freaking many. A lot of them will definitely range in importance, and you're given profiles on all of them that are updated throughout. There's also info like this for all the locations in the game, which is also really cool. The dialogue as well is also dang good. It's got that Takumi style of sense and humor that you're probably familiar with from stuff like Ace Attorney, and conversations always felt engaging and natural to me. I haven't really mentioned it until now, but while the way the characters talk to each other is kind of visually standard for these kind of adventure games, the actual world itself is always shown in this 2D perspective, kind of like that of a side-scroller. This makes the general presentation stand out a lot, and it suits the gameplay of jumping between objects well by keeping your area of interactivity simple. It would have gotten unnecessarily complex if you had to make your spirit move around a 3D environment. The characters are also all rotoscoped, if you've heard of that animation technique before, and they all move around in this view. They're pixelated as heck, but they do a great job at capturing all the actions of these characters, and they can get pretty fun with the mannerisms. The portraits themselves are also really great. These characters have a pretty cool and unique art style to them. They look a bit simpler and less detailed than other visual novels you may have seen before, but there's a great charm to them that makes each character stick out in looks, with the expressions themselves being fantastic. These two guards have the exact same outfit and looks, but their posture and expressions completely separate the two personalities they have. I appreciate great design like this. Sissel's design as well is also another one that I really enjoy, with that striking red suit, sharp yellow hair, and cool shades. Pretty sure the last thing I haven't mentioned about this game's presentation is the music. It's overall really great stuff. It uses the DS's sound font to make tracks that can be really intense when they need to be, or really cheery and nice. There's also some really good emotional tracks that stuck with me throughout, and there are bound to be several favorites that you'll go to know. I'd say it's about on par with the DS era race train music, which also has some fantastic stuff. The main theme specifically has this unique funk to it that's sure to stick out to anyone who hears it. Overall, I can say that I'm a pretty big fan of this game's OST, and we'll probably have it on loop for the next month. This game also isn't that long, surprisingly. My total playtime was about 11 hours, which is pretty short for mystery adventure standards. This is honestly one of the greatest strengths of the game though. This game has a set story that it wants to tell, and it's told with as much time as it needs. The pacing of the game is fantastic as a result. You're always just moving and progressing the story in some sort of important way. There are a total of 18 chapters in this game, but they're all pretty short. Barely any of them reach the hour mark, and they usually run 30 to 40 minutes, sometimes less. I feel like they made the story segmented this much in order to make it still work for pick up and play gaming, since this is still a handheld game, but it is still written well for long sessions where you dig through multiple chapters, because like I said, the story just keeps on going and going, holding your attention until the very end as a result, and that's one thing I really love about this game. If you want to get into mystery adventure games, I'd also say this is a great place to start. You're still given great amounts of gameplay from ghost tricking, and it's mixed with a fantastic story full of intrigue and heart that won't ask for a whole lot of your time. Speaking of that story though, I think at this point, I've exhausted everything I can talk about without spoiling anything. So here's a timestamp to skip spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled, and just go straight to my concluding thoughts, as I really want to get into specific spoilers and reveals from this game, including the finale and ending. I'll wait a few seconds for you to do that. Yeah, okay, let's do this. So for the spoiler section, I'm not about to go into a big summary of the whole story, because honestly that feels kind of pointless if you ask me. If you hear, I'm assuming you already know what happens, so I just want to get my points across. First off, I really love that twist of finding out there's another ghost out there besides you tonight. I always love those kind of twists where you have these special powers you alone have, but wait, what if you're not actually the only one capable of having them? I was also more caught off guard by the fact that the other ghost was frickin' Missile! Like, that wasn't something I saw coming at all, and it was kind of hilarious as well. But then, once you find out this twist, you get to use Missile's ghost tricking powers as well for a large amount of the later game puzzles. He can't manipulate objects the same way you can, but his movement has so much more range, and he's capable of switching the positions of two objects that have the same shape. This added so much more complexity to the later game puzzles, because you had to take into account Missile's abilities and how he plays a role in what you have to do. It's such an awesome addition, and it also helped make Miso more of a fan favorite than he already was in his appearance in Chapter 2. You can have a lot more fun interactions with him as well, and he's just very joyful, and I love this guy. He then gets better with the reveal that Rei, the first character that you meet and sets you off with an objective, was actually a 10-year older version of Missile. This reveal admittedly takes a bit to wrap your head around, but once it clicks, it's honestly really tragic how Missile had to wait 10 freaking years to actually get the events of this game rolling. Coming from a timeline where everyone he cared about died, and Sissel didn't help it at all because Missile as Rei wasn't there to guide him. Missile's abilities alone weren't able to really do much, and I love that you're able to understand this through the gameplay itself. As Missile, sure his movement is better, but as you discover from playing the game, switching objects of the same shape is way more limiting than what Sissel can do. Even as he's now a much older dog, his loyalty shines through, which shows how endearing of a character Missile really is. Like, I honestly had no clue who Rei was, so this threw me for an even bigger loop than the reveal of Missile even having ghost-tricking powers in the first place. And it's also worth shedding a tear over the fact that after working so hard and so long to alter fates, even making up that lie about you disappearing once the night is over, to make you even more motivated, which is also a great subversion. This version of Missile ceases to exist once he finally saved everyone. Honestly, just fantastic stuff. Another character that I really enjoyed was the quote-unquote evil Sissel, who is revealed to be named Yomiel. He's basically the main villain of the game, but they actually handle him in a really interesting way. It's sort of the twist of the villain being you all along, except he's completely his own character. His powers being much better than yours, with the ability to even manipulate living people and corpses, while also practically being immortal in his own body because of the Temsic fragment inside it that reverses any damage to him, did a good job at making this dude feel like an intimidating threat. This especially shined most with the two death reversals involving him, where you weren't able to do any ghost tricks in his sight, otherwise he would realize your presence. His motives as well added a ton of complexity to his character. It was all due to an incident 10 years ago before the game starts, which kicks off the whole story. Yomiel had lost his life after making the terrible decision of holding a young Lin hostage, leading to his death from a crashing Temsic fragment. He was able to get back into his own body due to the new ghost powers he got, but he still had lost so much as a result. His motive throughout the whole story is largely revenge, but you start to realize the strongest desire this guy had was just another chance at life, the ability to actually experience a natural life that he was robbed of. He was able to exist in his body and possess it, but in the end, he was still never truly living. The game does a great job of not demonizing the guy, while still not trying to justify his more awful actions like causing the death of Zhao's wife. He's a well-balanced antagonist and isn't even much of an antagonist by the end. I love how once Len understands the kind of feelings that Yomiel was going through and shed tears for him, was when he lost all reason for revenge, because at that point, it hit a dead end. It's really great to see how a dead guy's greatest desire was simply life itself. This is all perfectly wrapped up with the final chapter of the game, which is really dang cool. For this final chapter, we go into Yomiel's body after having the Temsic removed from it, which lets us travel back to the moment of his death, which was, 10 freaking years ago? I love this as a final escalation of this ghost tricking mechanic, as you're taken back to where this whole story started. Not only is it really dang intense, because every time you think you averted fate, a new way of dying keeps emerging, looking more and more fatal each time until Yomiel finally steps in with his own powers, but then it leads to the reveal of Sissel's true identity, a cat, who was Yomiel's closest friend during those lonely 10 years, and was named Sissel after his fiancée took her own life, over the grief of Yomiel's death. I really like how this twist is foreshadowed in particular. You see your death play out in a video early on of possessed Lin shooting Yomiel's body, while shooting the back and hitting the cap right before, but your attention is mainly focused on the whole, Lin shooting your supposed character, and you're not led to believe that the cat died because you see for yourself how it just got out of the bag and left. There's also really other cool foreshadowing, such as Sissel not being able to read, because, well, he's a cat, he can't really read, at least I don't think cats can't read. And the fact that spirits are able to take the forms of other people, if that's who they think they are, as shown from a quick gag of Lin thinking she's Cabanella. It's also fitting that since you're a character that has to observe others as a ghost, your true person is a pet who often just sits back and observes others as well, but it's still just really sad how you had such an unnoticeable death by getting shot from technically Yomiel, who was the one who loved and cared about you the most during those lonely years. The most impactful line during this is when Yomiuri explains how he lacks the ability to go back in time and reverse deaths like you, cause if he could, he would have saved your life. The finale of this game provides some fantastic revelations, not only because they'll throw you for a loop, but also because they're really good at being emotional. I love how this game has a focus on the love of pets and the bonds you have with them. That's something I've never really seen be such an emotional core until this game. As an owner of a cat myself that I love dearly, and I would certainly reverse time for if I could, this hit a fantastic sweet spot for me. The bonds we have with our pets are often very different than ones we have with humans. You can't really communicate with them at all, and it certainly can feel like there's a disconnect between you and them. Yet there's still this unique bond you can form with them that I'm sure is special to many, and it's lovely how this game incorporates that. Even if, pets in this game are able to talk to humans telepathically with like magical ghost powers, but hey, whatever, it gets the point across of your narrative, it's fine. This is all capped off with an ending that's extremely satisfying. Since you've basically altered the events of 10 years ago, everyone's lives are pretty different for the better. You're now owned by Detective Zhao and his daughter, with the mother being alive now, meaning that Yomiuri's murder has been reversed, giving him a second chance at redemption. And Lin is still fresh as a new detective. The only ones that have memories of what happened are Sissel, Missile, Yomiuri, and Zhao. And Sissel may or may not have still kept his ghost powers due to how this timeline played out, I don't know. You also get these different where are they now scenes for the many characters in this game throughout the credits, and I really love it when games do this kind of thing. The final moment at the end of the credits though is Yomiuri in jail since he still held a little girl hostage and escaped custody, but now he's finally being released. He thanks Sissel one last time for all that he's done, leaving behind a painting of his longtime friend, ending Ghost Trick. The ending overall is very conclusive and wraps up the whole story that this game wanted to tell. That's probably part of why we never got a sequel to this game, since the ending is so conclusive. If they want to tell another story with the concepts of this game, I wouldn't be opposed, but I already love and am content with what we were given here. Ghost Trick overall is an amazing time. For only around 11 hours of play, Ghost Trick provides such an engaging experience with fun and inventive puzzle-solving gameplay in the form of your ghost powers, a ton of fun characters that are hard not to love, an art style that sticks out and is full of charm, music that's full of its own funk and grabs your ears, and a story that kept me intrigued and hooked from start to end that I did not want to stop, with great emotional chorus that I'm sure is bound to get some sort of emotional reaction out of you. If you want to get into these kinds of mystery adventure games, this would honestly now be my first recommendation for you, as it doesn't ask for a whole lot of your time. It will still leave you with an extremely satisfying experience. I could see this game becoming one of my all-time favorites. I loved it that much, and I think this is one game where my admiration will continue to grow. If you're at all curious about giving this game a shot, I say go for it. I doubt you'll regret it. It's still only available on the DS and iOS though, so you may end up having to look for a DS copy of this game. Or you can emulate as well. Emulating DS games really isn't that hard nowadays, but don't tell Nintendo I said that. I'd really love for some sort of remaster or port for this game on modern systems, because I think it's very much possible to translate the gameplay of this game just fine to a controller, even if it was first made for a touchscreen. Either way, I'd still highly recommend playing this game for yourself, and have one hell of a night. Yo, what up, it's Post DD here. If you at all like what the heck I made here, you can go over there to see what I made over there, which is still here. Yeah, that's all I gotta say, so I'll see ya around, y'all. The heck is this outro?